Welcome to another episode of Pep Talks Uncut. This is a show brought to you by the Pennsylvania Equality Project and PEP Radio. We're into our third season now, and today we are joined by Casey McFarland.
Hello.
Casey, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that your job title is?
Yeah, so I am newly titled LAPC. That is a licensed associate professional counselor. The state of PA just made this happen, and it had to do with a lot of confusion through insurance companies and such. Long story short, before the LAPC happened, Pennsylvania did not have an associate license for people who were practicing therapy. You were just considered pre-licensed, and then you became licensed once you hit all of your hours and supervision. So now the associate license is a thing. I applied to it, got approved for it, and it pretty much is saying you have an official license by the state confirming that you are pre-licensed, working towards your hours under the state mandated rules. And as soon as I hit my hours, I will have a full license.
So that sounds equivalent to a student teaching. In
Close.
student teaching, you have to have so many accumulated hours in front of students.
hmm
I'm taking it that your hours count when you're working with individual clients. Does behind the scenes work, when the clients are not around, count towards your hours?
Definitely. So it's funny because, as you said, like student teaching, whenever we are in school with our master's program, we do an internship, and there are so many hours that go into that. And then
Mhm.
as soon as we get our degree, we start doing the hours of supervision and stuff like that to hit our licensure. It's a total of 3,000 hours that we have to do. 1,500 of them are considered direct, which is when we are in session talking to a client doing the actual work. The
Mhm.
other 1,500 are the indirect hours. So this can go towards note writing, any research or writing that we're doing ourselves, reading information out of books, out of professionals in the field and learning how to do that. Anything that has to do with counseling, but we're not directly speaking to a client, can count towards our indirect hours.
Okay, so how long will it take you then to reach that goal of the necessary hours for the state to shift you from the associate level up to the next level?
So for me personally, it's probably going to take a little longer. I'm not hitting full-time hours every single week.
Mhm.
Um, Respectfully, I have two young kids, so it's a little hard to do that sometimes. But there are people who do it about 2 years, little over, and that's the quickest you can do it. You cannot obtain your license in less than 2 years. They want us taking at least that amount of time to hit these hours. And then we have up to 6 years to get them. So I think I'll fall somewhere in the middle there, probably about the 4 year range. But I'll have been doing this for a year now, end of this month. So hopefully I have 3 more years and then I'll be there.
That's great. Now, when you say doing this, what exactly is it that you are doing with clients? What sort of counseling goes on?
Good question. So, we have this field, we have tons of opportunities and different pathways that we can take in order to do therapy. I have chosen to go the route of private practice. There's tons of others, but that seems to be what fits for me. I did my internship and began this career in a practice right out of my master's program. And I just recently decided to go out and start my own practice while still receiving state mandated supervision throughout the whole thing. So I'm not independently practicing by any means. But that's the realm I do it. And I'm in private practice and I have specialties. So I focus on LGBTQIA plus care. I also focus on grief and loss. And then my last specialty is spiritual and religious trauma.
Spiritual and religious trauma. So would
Mhm.
that be people coming out of churches and trying to put that past behind them, or is it people looking for a different direction to take in life? Or
The
could
answer
be
is
both.
yes to both. Yes to
Okay.
both. So I 9 times out of 10, it does happen to be people who are kind of de-escalating from the church or organized religion in some form. But I've also worked with people who still have faith, still want to believe, but maybe they were in a very radical state previous to coming to therapy. Maybe they're looking to shift to a different religion. Maybe it's just some existential questioning, like, hey, I believe in this, but there's parts of it that don't seem right to me, something to that effect. But as I said, the majority of them are people who have experienced trauma within the church, within their religion of whatever form, even spirituality, and it doesn't align with their morals or beliefs as they're growing older, getting into life, or finding their own identity. And honestly, it ties in a lot to the LGBTQIA plus community because unfortunately there are beliefs that are outdated when it comes to religion and spirituality that don't support your life. So I bring those two specialties together.
Okay. I did notice, reading your website and,
Mhm.
and other background information, that you have this affection for pets and helping people with pet therapy.
Yeah.
Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I I wish I could go into a much deeper level of therapy with it, but pretty much what my gist is on the website here is saying that I do offer emotional support animal letter writing. And what that does is pretty much allows you to bring your pet into housing that may otherwise not allow pets. A lot of times, clients will come in with a generalized anxiety disorder, sometimes something much more severe, and they rely on this pet for emotional stability. It could be something as simple as, hey, I just don't want to be lonely, right? This pet is
Mhm.
my family. I'm going to move somewhere and I need them with me. But it could also be an animal that does a lot more than that and help with panic attacks, something like that. The clear distinction I like to make, though, is I write letters for emotional support animals, not service animals, because that is a completely different realm of pet ownership.
Right.
So that is something I like to do, though, because I truly believe that they can be a huge help.
Okay, so what would you say would be one of the more obscure or bizarre animals that you've written a letter on behalf of for emotional support therapy?
It's a good question. To be honest, I haven't had anything that obscure. I've had dogs and cats, and that's about it.
So no
But
emotional support tortoises or something like
no, but I'm not against it. Listen, my house, I swear I could get a tax credit for having like a zoo here. We have a lot of pets, and my son has a leopard gecko. We have dog, three cats, and a fish. So I'm here for all of them. They all serve a purpose, and they're all important to us.
and as long as they are fulfilling that purpose, happy life to all of them.
Absolutely.
And speaking of a happy life to all, um, are you finding an uptick in the number of clients seeking therapy, given the current political climate that we're living in? I know there's been a number of changes and a lot of upheaval over the last several weeks in the political realm.
Sure.
How is that impacting folks in terms of your practice?
So it's definitely impacting people, and it's impacting people on higher levels than I think a lot of the general public understands. It's leaving a lot of people, myself included, I'm a human, um, feeling a sense of hopelessness, feeling this sense of there is turmoil going on, there is genocide occurring, there's these atrocities that are happening in the world, and there's this question of rights being taken away or continuing to fight to keep the rights that we do have, and it's this feeling of this sense of these are bigger issues that I can actually contribute to helping. And it's a depressive feeling because we we want to help, we want to get involved, and pretty much yes, there's an uptick in therapy, especially as we build closer to the election. Um, but there's a sense of emotional change that's occurring in clients that I already have, and kind of this nervousness that's building up, again, that hopelessness. And the best way that we can approach that is talking about the things we do have control over, because we can absolutely, talk about the bigger picture things that are going on. And we can accept, we don't have to like it, but we can accept the fact that maybe we can't have a direct influence on it, but we can start at the foundation. We can, have an influence on our communities and the places near and dear to us. And eventually there's going to be a ripple effect. We're going to make differences in the way that we want to see the world be a better place.
What would you recommend to somebody who wants to make the world a better place, but doesn't know quite where to start?
Great question. Honestly, walk outside, touch some grass, look around. Look around your neighborhood, see where there's maybe some disparities. See where there's, minority groups who are not getting the services that they need. Look at your school board, talk about education. That's how you form a community. That's the ideas that are coming out and being taught to our children. Um, Talk to local government, get involved, see what's going on. Easiest thing to do, volunteer. If anything, we all have time in some way. It may not be tons of hours, but maybe stop by for 1 hour, help at a soup kitchen, help at a women's shelter, something like that. Because we can't all donate money. We can't all run for office. We can't all do these things, but we can give care. And quite simply, that is what makes the world a better place. It has nothing to do with our political stance. It's just caring for your neighbor. So if
Mhm.
you start at the ground zero, that's where we're at, right? We want to step out and help the people who need it. And the best way you can do that is just getting involved in your community.
Okay, so let's say I volunteered to work for a nonprofit organization like the Pennsylvania Equality Project,
Hmm.
or perhaps a little closer to your area. Maybe I volunteer to work for Habitat for Humanity,
Sure.
and I happen to notice that some folks in the work that I'm doing are really struggling.
Mm,
What are some really good icebreakers that will help make a connection with that person who's struggling, and allow you to make recommendations such as perhaps therapy would be within your best interest?
sure. So I think the best way that we can open up to others and make sure that we're presenting a friendly space for them to open up back to us is one, respect. Two, validation.
Mhm,
We're not going to say, "Oh, well, it's not that bad," or "Other people have it worse." That's not helping anybody. So validating whatever experience they are going through. And if you're in a place that you feel safe enough to do it, a little bit of vulnerability, showing that you're also struggling. You're aware of the struggles that other people are going through, just recognizing that those things are real and saying, hey, maybe you are someone who has gone to therapy or are currently in it,
mhm,
and normalizing that. Just saying, hey, you know what? I'm in the same boat, but you know what made it a little easier? Having a space to just vent. We don't have to go in with an absolute goal or, come in and say, this is my exact problem. Maybe there's not an answer to the problem. Maybe you just need to let it out. We're
mhm.
living in a world where language and just talking can be a dangerous place, right? Maybe we're talking in a space where there aren't like-minded individuals. It's a space where our concerns or our worries aren't heard.
Mhm.
And therapy can always be a place that for that because it's unbiased in all sense of the word. So it's a space that you can just let it out.
So, a question that has plagued my mind
Mhm,
is this: you personally go through, let's say, an 8 hour day,
mhm,
and within that scope of 8 hours, maybe you've talked with 4 or 5 clients
mhm,
during that day, and they come to you with very traumatic experiences, that are depressing and filled with anxiety and tension and perhaps even a hint of death thrown in.
Sure.
The day is over. How do you decompress at the end of the
Good
day? After
question.
going through all of those emotional experiences, how do you set that aside and resume life with your own family in the evenings and on the weekends?
Great question. That's a great question, and the answer is probably I'm still learning.
Mhm.
But the best way I can say is it depends on the day. There are days where I go in with full energy, I'm ready to go, I'm able to compartmentalize and understand what is being spoken about at work because at the end of the day, this is my job. Um, and I'm able to, turn off the computer, go have dinner with family and go about my day, but there's definitely days that are more difficult. Maybe I'm not running at full capacity. Maybe I need to sit in a quiet room for give me 30 minutes,
Under the
let me stare
pool.
at a wall.
Under the
Exactly. Yes, let
yeah.
me go chill in the pool. I need to decompress. I need to literally just I call it mush brain. Like I have mush brain. I need to do nothing just for, give me a minute. Um, Another great way to do this, I go to therapy. So I have a therapist that I go and talk to. And, it's not about personal cases that I'm working on with my clients, but just venting about the job itself and the stress that can come with that. Um, Another thing is having other clinicians in the field, creating a community that you can speak to each other on the topic of the job and
Mm,
just saying, like, hey, this is extremely rewarding. This is a job that I wouldn't trade for the world. I love what I'm doing. I love my clients. I love um, what we're able to do and some of the differences we can make. But
mm,
hey, at the same time, this is really difficult. And there are days where, clients come in and they're talking about political climates, they're talking about death and depression and all of these things. And it's like, yeah, I'm feeling that too, right?
mhm,
So,
mhm.
I think another way that helps me kind of decompress or at least not need to do it as much at the end of my workday is um, being honest within my sessions and not taking up time for myself but just showing that I'm a human. I want to take away that power differential where I'm the expert or I'm the therapist that knows all and I can control all of my emotions with the state of the world, but just relating to and saying, yeah, I hear that.
So for folks who are watching our show that live in Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
maybe they live up in the Poconos, maybe they're in Philadelphia or in Erie. You're not in any of those places.
I'm not, no.
Not. However, it is possible for folks to go through therapy sessions with you. So
Mhm.
can you explain a little bit about how that's possible without
Sure.
having this very long commute?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to make the 6-hour drive once a week to come see me for therapy. My practice and the way I do it, it's completely run over telehealth. So you can be anywhere within the state of Pennsylvania, and I am able to see you over something very similar to this. It's like a Zoom call, but we go through Simple Practice. It's a platform that's used for telehealth therapy. And you get a little alert through email and say, we're ready to go. We log on, we talk for an hour, and then you go about your day. You could be on the other side of the state.
And I think we talked about this a little bit in our lead up call to this conversation we're having now, but it is specifically for people in Pennsylvania. In other words, your practice doesn't extend beyond to Maryland or
No.
New York or Ohio.
No, so therapists, we all have different license depending on where we are state-wise, where we reside. So
Mhm.
wherever we have a license, and some people have more than one, good on them. I, one day hope to get there, but at this point, I'm only licensed as an associate professional counselor within the state of PA. So it does not cross state borders.
Just making that abundantly clear for anyone who
Absolutely.
might be watching.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Your practice works with the LGBTQIA plus community. One of the troublesome statistics with the LGBTQIA plus community is dealing with alcoholism, drug abuse.
Mm,
Um, what recommendations would you make to folks who hit rock bottom, who say I need help?
sure.
What do you tell them?
So, whenever we're hitting rock bottom, and if it's due to addiction in any way, whether it be drugs, alcohol, anything else, there's tons of types, go to a specialist.
Hmm.
Because, yes, I'm a therapist. Yes, I specialize in that care for the community, but I am not a specialist in addictions. And what I think is so important about this field is finding people who specialize in the care that you need. Another thing to ask if you're dealing with addiction is, what program do I want to be a part of? Because a lot of programs, addiction programs, recovery programs, um, it's heavily influenced with religion and kind of, letting go, letting God, and putting your worries, your sorrows, and struggles kind of into his hands and letting him take the reins. And effective for people who have that belief. Great. I hope that works. But there are people out there who don't. So there are options out there that are not quite as heavily focused in the religious realm of things. But I do think that it is helpful to have addiction care in that special realm of treatment. Also, having care that is just talk therapy, and it doesn't have to be focused purely on when was the last time you used? How do you feel when you use? You have a life outside of that. You don't need to be identified by your addiction as if that's the only struggle you have. Talk therapy comes in. We can talk about the things that drove you to the addiction.
Hmm.
What are you experiencing outside of your addiction that is a struggle? Is it because of the addiction or is it something completely separate? We don't, I should say,
Yeah.
I don't think it is healthy to focus just on that problem.
Hmm.
Because if I've learned one thing from therapy, everything's interconnected. It's like a tree, the roots go out much farther than we realize. So we may start talking about the addiction,
Hmm.
but where else does that go? And that's what the talk therapy I think is great for.
And so while you may not necessarily address issues directly related to the addiction, there
Mhm.
may be other traumatic experiences that led
Yes,
someone to that addiction that you might be able to help unpack. And
absolutely.
it could be the death of a loved one. It could be the loss of a job, or having to make a crucial financial decision within a
Mm,
short period of time.
yeah.
Something like selling your house.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean those are some pretty life-changing moments,
Yeah.
and I could see those being very stressful. I've lived through all of them, as a
Mm,
matter.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's tough.
It is, but I think it's either we persevere and not allow those experiences to keep us down,
Mm,
or we just simply accept the fact that we're vulnerable and seek
yeah,
help.
absolutely. And it's the harder and stronger choice to make. It
Mhm.
is by no means an easy feat to persevere.
Speaking of perseverance, I know at my age, and I'm not going to divulge what my age is right now, but I was fortunate that I was able to retire somewhat young.
Mhm.
Um, as uh, as time goes by, that retirement age keeps inching higher and higher.
Sure does.
And I'm curious, have you noticed an uptick in older folks coming to therapy?
I have noticed an uptick in requests from people, and I don't ask for any exact age, but
Sure.
just based off of a profile picture from an email, you can see someone who is further in age.
Hmm.
And I've noticed an uptick in request for care because it it isn't the world we lived in 50 years ago. Retirement age is getting up there. Maybe you hit the age and you can't afford to retire. Just because you hit the age of retirement doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
Um, and unfortunately, we big to ask the question, how long is Social Security going to last?
Hmm.
How many benefits do you actually get from your job? Maybe you had some crisis within your lifetime coming up to retirement age and you needed to dip into your savings. Your 401k isn't what it was supposed to be or what you were projecting,
Hmm.
and life changes. So, quite honestly, the same approach that we take when talking about retirement extending past when we wanted it to is the same approach that I would take with grief and loss.
Hmm.
You are grieving a plan that you had for your entire life that isn't playing out. It's taking longer than you thought.
So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with the 5 stages of grieving.
Mhm.
You're telling me those apply to my 401k? On
They
top of my
could.
family members, because I was in denial for the longest time that I even had one,
Mhm.
because it sure didn't seem like it, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
so not only am I in denial, I passed that point. I think I'm in acceptance. It's gone,
Mhm.
and the grieving continues. I think
It does. Yeah.
for my
So
bank, not for me.
of course. So I think that the and personally I love her stages that she constructed. There's lots of different lines of thought when it comes to grief and loss, but I personally align with her outlook on it. And grief and loss can be applied to so many things outside of a physical death. So it can be towards your 401k. Maybe it's not lasting quite as long as you wanted it to. Maybe it's not as big as you wanted it to be. We can apply grief and loss to loss of a job, loss of a friendship, obviously loss of a pet, like we said earlier, that's part of your family. Loss of identity. Maybe we aren't who we thought we were.
Right.
Maybe we're understanding ourselves differently as we grow in age. Um, loss loss is so much more than just death.
Hmm.
Loss is the change of plans. As soon as they don't go according to plan, you're grieving.
And it would seem to me that that could happen, uh, especially more so in May and June, as students are beginning to graduate from high school and college and earning their degrees and such,
Hmm.
finding themselves no longer protected by that educational realm that housed them for so
Yeah,
long. They're now vulnerable because they have to find work or move on to the next degree program, or in some way they're going through massive change.
sure.
And in times like that, what recommendations can you offer that help ease some of that transition?
So, number one, acceptance of it. Because I think there is a huge wave of shame that comes along to people who maybe don't have a job aligned as soon as they graduate, because that's the textbook successful person. As soon as you graduate, you have your job, you already have an apartment or a house bought, ready to go. And if you aren't on that road, then you're failing.
Hmm.
Essentially, that's what society tells us. So,
Hmm.
one, just some acceptance, um, not falling into that shame and just taking things day by day. Also, don't compare. Don't compare yourself to anybody else because none of us are running the same race. We talk about equality a lot, and obviously that's something I want for everyone. But we want to talk about equity too. We all have a different starting line in our race. So, someone who has a job lined up, who has a house bought, ready to go right out of graduation, their starting line was here, and yours may be way back here.
Hmm.
You're running a different race. But also, I'm going to be honest, any career, you have to have a bit of luck. And I'll tell you what, the people who have it lined up ready to go, they have luck.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that doesn't matter how much effort you put into it, luck comes and goes to anybody.
Hmm.
Also, who do you know? If they're lucky enough to be in a family that knows someone who has a job opening at this place, good for them. I'm glad.
Hmm.
Um, but it gives them a leg up. So you may not have all of those privileges, quite honestly. And
Right.
just keeping that perspective and being kind to yourself about it. Because if we compare ourselves to others, especially ones who have a starting line much further ahead than our own, it's going to be extremely discouraging.
Hmm. And that, unfortunately, wraps up our time together. We've hit about 30 minutes into today's show, and we've covered a lot of material, I think,
Sure have.
grieving and trauma and 401k plans. So
All
I'm not
important
sure.
stuff.
I'm not sure if you tuned in for financial advice today or more information from Casey McFarland, today's guest on Pep Talks Uncut. Join us again next week. We'll be back with another guest. And Casey, thank you again for being on today's show.
Absolutely.
And we will be back next week. Thank you much for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.